Welcome to Smart English Stories. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more English stories. My name is Sam. I want to tell you a story that changed my life forever. I never thought I'd have a reason to share this story because, to be honest, I felt like I was the last person anyone would want advice from, especially when it came to learning English. English wasn't my first language, and it felt impossible for a long time. But here I am, and if you're reading this, maybe it's because you, too, are struggling, maybe thinking about giving up. Please don't. Just listen to my story. Because maybe, just maybe, it'll be worth it. I still remember that first day of English class. My heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. The teacher called on me, asked me to say my name. It's simple, right? But my voice just wouldn't come out. I was too scared. My classmates' eyes felt like spotlights, and I felt like I was standing there with nothing to say, nothing to give. All I could manage was a whisper, Sam. My cheeks burned with embarrassment. I went home that day, looked in the mirror, and told myself, maybe English just isn't for you. But life had other plans. Every job I wanted, every friend I tried to make, it all came back to one thing: English. At first I thought, well, maybe I can just get by, but that getting by wasn't enough. Every time I tried to express myself, every time I wanted to share a piece of who I was, I felt stuck. It felt like there was a wall between me and the rest of the world, and I was tired of that wall. I realized then that English wasn't just a language. It was a bridge, one that could connect me to the dreams I had and the life I wanted to live. I bet you can feel that too. That frustration, that feeling of not quite belonging, not quite reaching where you want to be. I'm telling you this because I've been there. I was you. And there's a part of me that wants to go back in time, to look that scared, frustrated, embarrassed Sam in the eyes and say, don't give up. Not yet, because what happened next was something I never expected. For days, I couldn't shake off the feeling of defeat. Everywhere I turned, I felt like I was surrounded by words I couldn't understand. Street signs, advertisements, conversations on the bus, they all seemed like codes that everyone else understood, and I was left out. I thought of quitting so many times, just turning away and living in my own little world where English didn't matter. But then, one quiet evening, something happened that changed everything. I was sitting in my room, staring at a small piece of paper I'd scribbled words on earlier. I could barely read my own handwriting, and my mind was so tired from trying to memorize them. That's when my mom walked in. She looked at me with those kind, knowing eyes of hers and asked, Sam, why do you look so sad? I tried to explain, but the words got tangled up in my throat. Tears filled my eyes, and I could only say, Mom, it's just too hard. She sat beside me and held my hand, her warm fingers calming my shaking ones. "Sam," she said, "I know it feels impossible now, but remember, everything worth having is hard at first. You might not see it yet, but you're stronger than this. Don't give up." Her words felt like a light in the darkness. For the first time, I thought, maybe I could give it another try. Maybe I could find the strength to keep going. The next day, I picked up my books with a different mindset. I told myself, one word at a time, one day at a time. It wasn't about perfecting English overnight. It was about taking small steps forward, no matter how hard it seemed. And each day I felt a little bit stronger. I stumbled, I made mistakes, I even embarrassed myself a few times, but I didn't stop. And slowly, bit by bit, I noticed something wonderful happening. One day during lunch, I overheard two classmates talking about their weekend plans. Normally, I would have just listened in silence, not daring to join. But this time, I understood a few words. It was just a handful, but they were enough. I smiled to myself, realizing I was finally making progress. A few months later, I joined a small study group. At first, I only listened, but eventually I began speaking, even if it was just a sentence or two. It was terrifying, but the feeling of finally connecting with people was something I had never experienced before. It felt like a small victory, one that gave me the courage to keep going. As time went by, I started to see how English was more than just words on a page. It was a way to share my dreams, to laugh with friends, to understand movies, books, and stories from people all around the world. I remember watching my first English movie without subtitles. It was like magic. For the first time, I was a part of the story. I could understand the jokes, feel the emotions, and lose myself in the characters. That night, I sat on my bed, holding the DVD case, and thought, if I had given up, I would have missed this. There were still difficult days, of course. Days when I wanted to quit, when I thought, maybe this is as far as I can go, but I would remember those small victories, those tiny sparks of joy that reminded me of why I started. Each step forward, no matter how small, made me feel alive. I was learning, growing, becoming someone I never thought I could be. And every new word I learned felt like a brick, building a bridge between me and the life I dreamed of. Then one day, something extraordinary happened. I was at a friend's party, surrounded by people I barely knew, feeling that old anxiety creeping in. But this time, I didn't let it stop me. I took a deep breath, smiled, and joined a conversation. We laughed, shared stories, and for the first time, I felt like I truly belonged. I looked around the room, realizing that I was no longer the quiet, nervous person in the corner. I was part of something bigger, connected by a language that once felt impossible. It's hard to put into words what that night felt like. Standing there, laughing with my friends, I felt a kind of joy that's hard to describe. It was like I'd finally found a piece of myself that had been missing for so long. For years, I had believed that I was destined to always be the outsider, the one who didn't fit in. But that night, I realized that all those hours, all the struggle, and all the tears were worth it. Every mistake, every embarrassing moment had brought me to that point. One of my friends, Sarah, noticed me smiling and asked, "Sam, what are you thinking about?" I hesitated, but I knew she'd understand. Just ... how much things have changed. A year ago, I wouldn't have even tried to talk to anyone here. She looked at me with surprise, like she had never imagined me any other way. "But you're so good at it now, Sam. It's like you were always meant to be here." Hearing that made my heart swell with pride. I felt something shift inside me. I started to believe in myself in a way I hadn't before. This wasn't just about English anymore. It was about proving to myself that I could face challenges, that I could overcome the things that scared me. Each time I spoke up, each time I dared to use a new word or join a conversation, it was like telling myself, "You're capable, you're worthy." Of course, there were still tough days. Days when I felt like I'd hit a wall. One time, I tried reading an advanced English book, and every other word felt foreign. I felt like that struggling student all over again. But instead of giving up, I reminded myself of all the times I'd already pushed through. I thought of my mom's words, how she believed in me even when I didn't. I kept the book by my bed and read a little every night. Slowly, I started to understand more. The sentences began to make sense, and one day I found myself getting lost in the story, no longer worrying about every word. Learning English opened so many doors for me. It wasn't just about talking to people or understanding movies, it was about living my dreams. I got my first job because I could speak English. It wasn't easy at first, I was terrified. My first day, my boss asked me to answer the phone, and my heart sank. I was afraid of misunderstanding or saying the wrong thing. But I took a deep breath, picked up the phone, and introduced myself. To my surprise, the person on the other end was patient, kind, and didn't mind my occasional mistakes. That small moment felt like a massive victory, and with each call, I got better. By the end of the week, I was answering calls with confidence. I felt like I had crossed another bridge, each step bringing me closer to who I wanted to be. Then came a moment I'll never forget. I was at a family gathering, sitting next to my younger cousin. She looked up at me with wide eyes and asked, "Sam, how did you learn English so well?" I laughed, taken aback by her admiration, and realized how far I had come. To her, I wasn't just Sam, I was someone she looked up to, someone who had done something special. I told her it wasn't easy, but if you want something badly enough, if you're willing to put in the hard work, you can achieve anything. As she listened, I could see a spark in her eyes, a little glimmer of hope and inspiration. In that moment, I understood that my journey wasn't just about me anymore. My struggles, my hard-earned victories, could inspire others too.